Bradley Beal saga in Phoenix is over, and he's an LA Clipper. Now, I was notified of this signing during my break at work, so I was like, I gotta make a video about this as soon as possible. Typically, when I get home from work, I do my workout, but we gotta get this video out here. Got a lot to talk about. Now, the deal is a 2-year, $11 million deal, player option for the second year. So just one guaranteed year on it. And if he wants to make $5.5 million for one more year in LA, he can do so. But the buyout was successful. So I'm not sure how the buyout is going to work. I don't know if Phoenix is stretching out that 100 and whatever $million that is owed to Bradley Beal over the course of 4 or 5 seasons. Is it going to be like the Luol Deng stretched contract that the Lakers had to do in order to bring in LeBron? I'm not sure. But long story short, he's out of Phoenix. I'll talk about it for Phoenix really quickly because this video is going to be mainly about the fit in LA. But this whole situation was like everybody else in Phoenix was the kid, the son or daughter, whatever, in the relationship of 2 parents that should have been divorced 5 years ago, but they're just trying to cling on to something and hopefully it resolves itself. Like, nah, they had to get this over and done with. They finally bit the bullet and bought Beal out, and this is going to clear the air and the space for Jalen Green to be in the backcourt next to Booker. No awkwardness with Beal in the locker room just chilling. So yeah, the Suns can finally just wash their hands of the situation. As for the the Clippers, in general, I think this is a good signing for them. Now, Bradley Beal was getting a lot of hate over the past 2 or 3 seasons for the amount of output he was bringing to the Suns, and I guess towards the tail end of his career in Washington, in comparison to his price tag. He was being paid like he was a top 10 player in the entire league, though his output is that of an all-star every other year. And I think he only was a 3-time all-star. I know he had that one year where I think he led the league in scoring. But yeah, we've always known the type of player that Bradley Beal is, and it was never that of a $50 million player. The Wizards just had to give him that contract to cling on to a franchise player at the time, and they washed their hands of the situation in dealing him to Phoenix. Phoenix was willing to bite the bullet because they wanted to win now. Matt Ishbia wanted to win now, and they put together Booker, Beal, and KD in hopes that it would all work out, regardless of the contracts. Fast forward 3 years later, it didn't work out, and yeah, it was a lot of hate for Bradley Beal just due to the price tag. But he's still a damn good player. He's still a great scorer, and I feel like in a situation like this where he's not being compared to players that are making 40+ M's per year like Jason Tatum, Steph, LeBron, KD, he's not being compared to them anymore. He can have the output of an all-star caliber player. He's only being paid $5.5 million per year. Well, maybe just for this season. I don't think he'll accept his player option next year, especially if he has a good year. But he's making $5.5 million this upcoming season. If you're getting 80% of whatever Bradley Beal was at his peak, that is a steal. If you're getting half of what Bradley Beal was at his peak for 5.5 M's, that's still a steal. Still a steal. That's a bargain. So it's an opportunistic pickup. It's very low risk, high reward. I'm not sure how they're going to implement him into the rotation because on face value, you're thinking of a backcourt of James Harden and Bradley Beal. Rewind 5+ years ago, and you're willing to ignore all of the defensive deficiencies that a backcourt like this can bring because they're going to be so dynamic offensively. Now, James was still really dynamic last year. I think he was All-NBA 3rd team, definitely an All-Star, and he had to carry the Clippers offense due to Kawhi missing like half the season. James was still really good at the age of 34 or 35. But it's not Houston James. And Bradley Beal, the Bradley Beal we have now, I don't think it's going to revert back to Washington Wizards Bradley Beal. So you're still going to have two great players in your backcourt, but the defensive downside might be a little too steep to start them together. Now, Kawhi is still a great defender, but he's not Defensive Player of the Year Kawhi Leonard. He's not the Spurs Kawhi Leonard, who was an absolute dog on the defensive end. Zubac is somebody that can anchor defense, all defensive second team last year, but I don't think he can carry a defensive unit to being elite if the supporting cast isn't up to par defensively. Like last year, you had Chris Dunn starting a lot of games in the backcourt next to James Harden. Derrick Jones Jr. is a athletic body that you can throw on the wing. And you still have Kawhi Leonard in the starting lineup, who is a plus defender. Don't get me wrong. He is still a plus defender, even though he's not what he was. That made it easier to hide the likes of James Harden on the defensive end. But now if you're going to have a backcourt of Beal and Harden playing 30-plus minutes together, Kawhi is a year older. John Collins is now coming into the fold. That's where the defense in this projected starting lineup kind of falters. But there's no guarantee that they're going to start Bradley Beal. In Phoenix, they were pressured to start him every year because he was making 40-plus M's. Now he's making $5.5 million. That's a player that you're comfortable bringing him off the bench. So it is going to be interesting to see how Ty Lue juggles this new personnel he has, bringing in these offensive talents in Bradley Beal and John Collins, who both are talented enough to be starters, but for the Clippers to have the most success, is it in their best interest to have them both immediately in the starting lineup? I think John Collins is guaranteed to be the starting four because they also brought in Brook Lopez. I don't think you're bringing in Brook Lopez to be a third-string center so that John Collins can be the backup center. I think you're bringing him in the backup Zubac, and you're bringing Collins in to start at the 4. So if it were up to me, I would keep Chris Dunn in the starting lineup so you can still have that hound of a defender in the backcourt next to James Harden. He can take the best offensive option day in and day out. Doesn't even matter if that option is 6'6", 6'7". Chris Dunn is still going to try his ass off and make life difficult as possible for that said player. I think it's best that you keep him in the starting lineup next to James Harden. Kawhi Leonard can guard the second best perimeter option. Most nights, I think everybody's comfortable having Kawhi Leonard defend the second best offensive option. And that is a better personnel for Zubac to be the anchor of. And I think Bradley Beal, I was kind of saying this in the last year of his Phoenix days, that it's probably in their best interest to bring him off the bench. It's a tough pill to swallow if he's making $45 million and you're bringing him off the bench, but I think they should have done that in having KD and Book and Beal. I think that's just a little too redundant. They should have brought Beal off the bench, but they never did it because he was making 40-plus M's. Now he's making 5.5. You can easily bring him off the bench, and he can be a super sub. He can be 6th man of the year. Fuck it. But I think it is in their best interest to have him be that 6th man for them moving forward. They could have a bench rotation of Beal, this is off the top of my head, Beal, Brook Lopez, still got Batum, Derrick Jones Jr., gotta be missing somebody. But that's still a really good bench rotation. The Clippers have really good depth. 1 through 5, they have a good starter and a good backup at all 5 positions. And I think it's in their best interest to bring Bradley Beal off the bench so they can retain their stellar defense. They were 3rd in defensive rating last season. And a big thing that makes me more understanding of starting Bradley Beal is because they were 3rd in defense, so they can kind of jeopardize some of that in order to prioritize just more of an offensive flow and more shot creating in the starting 5, so they can sacrifice some of their strong points on the defensive end in order to amplify their offense. But I think in the playoffs, when defense is a lot more important, you're not going to want to have a backcourt of James Harden and Bradley Beal. But all that being said, still a fantastic signing, very low risk, potential high reward. Does it make them a definitive championship contender? I'd say no, but it does make them a better team. I think there's about 4 tiers that you can divide the teams in the Western Conference. I think there's a tier of, you can argue that the Thunder are in a tier of their own, but I'm going to say the top tier in the West is composed of them and Houston. The tier below that, worthy adversaries, would be like the Wolves and the Nuggets. The Nuggets had a really good offseason, and they pushed the Thunder to 7 games. So I think you can throw the Mavs in that tier as well, given their offseason and Kyrie coming back and AD hopefully being fully healthy. Obviously bringing in Cooper Flag, who should be a high-level producer from day one. So I think the tier below OKC and Houston is Dallas, Minnesota, and Denver. And then I think in that third tier, you're going to find your teams with aging superstars that don't have the best team composition, like the Clippers. That doesn't really describe the Clippers, but I still think they're in that third tier. Clippers, the Warriors, the Lakers, all very talented teams, but for one reason or another, we don't view them as serious championship contenders, even though they have that high-end talent. So I think the Clippers are definitively in that third tier of teams out west, but I'd probably put them at the top of that pack. I think they have a chance of creeping into that second tier with Dallas, Denver, and Minnesota. Are they championship contenders? No, but this move, it's given that it's so low risk and has the potential for having high reward, it's a move you make 10 times out of 10, especially given the state that this team is in. They're not rebuilding. They've committed to Kawhi Leonard for the next 2 years. I think they gave James Harden an extension. Don't quote me on that, but they don't have draft capital to rebuild. They don't have young talent. They're going to have to see this to the end, honestly. There's no tank job on the horizon. They're competing. And if a talent of the likes of Bradley Beal is available that you can get on $5.5 million per, if that's available, you got to take it. I can look back on this video maybe 12 months from now and be like, Ryan, you were a fucking idiot. But that's my day one reaction. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. But until the next one.